and happy Canada Day. It's a day to celebrate and be proud of our Canadian heritage. Over the next half hour, we'll bring you some of the local stories that celebrate the culture, history, and beauty of this place we call home. Canada is known for celebrating its multiculturalism, but over the years, many First Nations languages and traditions have faded away. A decade ago, the Lheidli T'enneh created a drumming group. The drummers not only get in touch with their cultural traditions, but share them with all of Prince George.
With every practice in the park, they connect more deeply with Lheidli tradition.
Now I even know what some of them mean. Like I can hear sometimes I'll hear the elders talk and I'll know what they're saying.
Anne Bozoki grew up in a Prince George very different than what it is today.
It was predominantly white then when I was quite young, and then more culture started to come in.
Now she has a close connection to the Lheidli. Her daughter is a band member and fellow drummer.
We don't have much of our culture left, so the parts that we can spare I think are really important to share with others.
Playing with the PGSO during the Canada Winter Games and on Aboriginal Day, the Castan drummers are sharing their music with the whole community.
Even when we're in the park, you'll notice, as we're drumming and singing, people are walking around and they're drawn to the drum, and the kids especially. And it's because it's the first sound we hear.
The songs grow and change as they're passed on from generation to generation. Not only helping preserve the carrier language, the music has a deep effect.
The drum and the songs just it creates that balance, and that just, it's like everything's gonna be okay.
Finding peace and connecting with heritage through song. Camille McDonald, CKPG News.
He was a world-renowned botanist who conducted plenty of work in this region, but few know the details of David Douglas's work collecting seeds and samples for the Royal Horticultural Society and its native home of Scotland. The connection between Douglas and Prince George exists into present day.
It's called the David Douglas Botanical Garden at UNBC, so named after the Scottish botanist.
He left school at a young age because he was not a good student, and actually got connected up with William Hooker, who was definitely involved in botany and involved with the Horticultural Society in England. And Hooker, as his patron, got him out plant exploring, and he did 3 major expeditions here to North America.
I think he was cantankerous, difficult. He was an incredible plant explorer and knew when he saw plants that had not been collected, he sent at least 230 some new species back to Europe that had never been collected by Europeans before.
With the British Horticultural Society, David Douglas was a plant collector, feeding the appetites of European landowners for all things exotic from the mysterious North America.
A lot was natural history, and a lot of it was just documentation. So finding new species, whether it was plants or birds or some other critter, and describing them and putting a name to them.
His travels brought him to this region, where he spent years collecting seeds and plants. He also had a dream, as he described in a letter to Hooker dated August 6, 1829.
I am not certain, but that when I have completed my exhibition on the continent of America, I may cross to the opposite shore and return in the southerly line near the Russian frontier with China. What a glorious prospect.
But it was already June in Fort St. James.
700 miles to Sitka, North America. Then he had to go to Siberia, and then he had to go down into Scotland. So he really realized that he really could not make the journey, and actually chose to turn back and go back to Fort Vancouver.
And that is where the mystery of David Douglas in this region begins. En route back to Port Vancouver, his canoe capsized in Fort George Canyon.
As he came through Prince George, or Fort George at the time, and he actually wrecked in the Fraser Rapids on the Fraser River and lost 2 to 3 years worth of collections there. It was a real heartbreaking moment for him.
I lost every article in my possession, saving an astronomical journal, book of rough notes, charts, and barometrical observations with my instruments. My botanical notes are gone, and what gives me most concern, my journal of occurrences also, so this is what can never be replaced, even by myself. All the articles needful pursuing my journal were destroyed, so that my voyage for this season was frustrated. I cannot detail to you the labour and anxiety this occasioned me, both in body and in mind.
Of course, the stately giant of this region is named after him, the Douglas fir, but it's impossible to say what Douglas may have taken back from this region with his journal lost.
I'm very curious about what was in it. I've actually read one of his earlier journals, and in a later publication of it, there were letters he had written back to Hooker during the time of the last journal that he lost. And it's really insightful, and it would have been lovely to know what was happening in the region from his point of view.
Unfortunately, David Douglas met an untimely death in Hawaii at the tender age of 34, but his work lives on today in the likes of the Royal Horticultural Gardens and in the forests of his native Scotland. Cheryl Jan, CKPG News.
Next on CKPG's Canada Day special, a hat that links Prince George and Canada to Great Britain, as well as one of the most famous battles of all time.